Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lauren-Jane, I'm the surgical doctor. I'm an F2, just about to start training to be a paediatric surgery doctor, or as they call it, the trained paediatric surgeon. This is my second video wearing a sweater vest. Isn't that excellent? So today we are going to be talking about how to deal with well-meaning but not very helpful comments from people you care about. So it's a bit of a sticky situation, and I'm not sure if anyone else has actually endured this. It's something I wanted to make a video about because I think these comments can sometimes really halt you in your progress, in your growth, which is why I wanted to discuss it. So, well-meaning comments that are harmful. So what am I talking about? So I'm going to give you a real world example. So my dad died a few years ago. He died when I was in my first year of medical school. To give you a bit of background about me, I am an introvert, believe it or not. I know I'm a YouTuber, but I am quite introverted. I'm not great socially. One of the things I've always loved doing is reading. I'm happiest with a book. You could probably, pop me in a little reading lodge in the middle of nowhere and I will be absolutely fine. When I decided to be a doctor, my dad was not happy about it at all. He thought that it was an absolutely terrible idea and he was very negative about the whole thing, really. He wasn't supportive, he wasn't particularly excited when I got into medical school, and he didn't mean any harm. He didn't mean to negate any of my success, which he did, but he didn't mean to. His issue was that he felt like I would be much happier as an academic. So I'd done a theology degree before I went to medical school, and he thought that, because he knows me better than anyone, that I would be happiest as an academic, just, kind of buried in a book, buried in a library, just doing my work, my research, and reading and spending a lifetime, beneath books. And so that was his position. That's where he came from. So his concern came from a place of love. But actually it took me years to get onto GEM. People ask me all the time how I did it, how I kept going when I kept failing the GAMSAT, when I kept having to, go and get this bit of experience or that bit of experience, or, read this thing on how to do a personal statement or how to interview. And it took so much energy. And all the while, and they don't remember this now because I'm a doctor, but back years ago when I said that I was going to train to be a doctor, no one was supportive. I think there was like one or two people, but everyone thought that it was a phase, it was never going to happen. And so I was constantly dealing with this sort of like, no one meant to be unhelpful, no one was being unkind, they just didn't take it seriously. So I'm here trying to achieve this thing, this great, huge, massive thing that's, I didn't have any science background whatsoever, so it was just a huge undertaking and no one's supporting me really. Not only am I not being supported, but I'm having a conversation with my dad, who I really care about what he thinks, and he's saying, this is not for you, this is not the path for you, you're not suited to this role. And obviously we are now years down the line. I'm a qualified doctor. I've been a qualified doctor for almost 3 years and I love it. If you've watched, I don't know if you've watched my day-to-day videos, but I love being a doctor. It's absolutely wonderful. It's the best thing I've ever done for myself and I don't regret it at all. But what was really problematic was when I was in this really vulnerable period, when I was really trying to create something for myself, I was having this conversation with my dad where he was saying, your personality does not fit this role. And obviously now my dad has passed, we never get to have a conversation where that's rectified. That's kind of the legacy that he has left for me. So it made me reflect on how we deal with well-meaning but comments that kind of detract from a goal that we've set ourselves on. So the ways that I've been dealing with this there are a few ways, and I wanted to share them with you. So the first thing that I did was to open up a conversation with my dad. And basically we just to have a conversation about, me saying, I'm aware that what your position is and that you think, I'd be better in the library. I agree, that probably is my natural home. But actually I've thought about it and this is the thing that I want to do. And I think it's really important that you open up that communication and be honest and say, actually, I need your support right now because it's hard. And just to open up that communication and see what they say from there, because often I think people don't realise how much stock, especially when it's a parent or someone you respect or care for, how much stock you put in having their support and having them saying, you can do this. And I really needed that at that point all those years ago, was someone just to say, Lauren-Jane, you've got this. And actually no one did until later on when things started coming together. And I really struggled with the fact that he didn't say that at that point. I think the second thing is to be reflective. So sometimes our parents they know us better than we know ourselves. And sometimes they've lived longer than we have. And sometimes I think it's important just to have a reflection and think, well, do they have a point? And, you know, my dad absolutely had a point. Absolutely. He's not wrong. I probably would have been very happy as an academic, but I wouldn't have been as happy as I am as a doctor. And so that brings me on to my next point. So, you know, communicate, be reflective, but also, you know, if you've thought about this, if you've done the work experience and you know what you know and you are fixed on this goal and you know that it's the thing for you, then you have to then in this conversation say, look, you know, I've done the research and I appreciate your concerns, but ultimately, you know, I know, and this is what I want to do, and it would be very beneficial to me to have your support in this regard, and then hopefully you can sort of move forward from there and these comments go by the wayside. The other thing to remember, and I talked about this is a concept which is really important, but having compassion. So always for yourself and also for the other person. So for yourself, obviously, because sometimes these conversations can be really draining. I mean, my dad was well-meaning, but I know sometimes relatives aren't always particularly supportive. If you are enduring something like that, then you need to have compassion for yourself and make sure that you're dealing with these emotions. And I think it's just helpful. So one of the ways that I always deal with my emotions is I try and work out, when I'm sad, I try and work out where that's coming from and sit and reflect on it. So if you feel like things are not going well for you, you're really low, just try and work back and work out where these feelings are coming from. And if you work back that the fact that, you know, Aunt May keeps telling you that you're too old to go to medical school, and Mum keeps saying you're too old to go to medical school, you're never going to get in, why don't you go and do something else? Just knowing that those comments that are causing you the angst is actually really helpful, because then you can kind of work through this formula, work through some formula and help move beyond it rather than just letting it fester. So compassion for yourself is important, but also compassion and understanding for other people. So my dad meant well, but also, you know, my dad was he was a very intelligent man, but if you know anything about my background, you'll know that I'm from a very working class family on both sides. My dad probably would have loved the opportunity to go to university, but that was never a conversation, it was never an option for him. He also wanted to be a pilot, but his eyesight wasn't good enough, so he left school and his only option was going to work in my nan's factory. So my nan worked as a tailoress, and my dad went in to be a manager in an upholstery factory. So these were the only options that he had. He's never had the options open to him that I did, coming, you know, 26 years later. So often I think if relatives are making comments, it's important to understand that they didn't necessarily have the same opportunities that we did, and therefore they can't always put themselves in the same shoes that we're wearing. We have more choices that they just didn't have. And that's something that I tend to reflect on when I think about the position that my dad was coming from. So finally, the thing that I want to focus on is getting support for yourself. So if you have had this whole conversation and you've been to the person and said, look, I take your position, I've thought about it, but actually I've done my research and I know that this is the thing for me, then you need, and you've made no progress whatsoever. You know, they're just not listening. There's no support. You've told them, I need your support in this. And you've met them halfway because you've already said, you know, I've taken this on board and I have thought about it, but actually these are my arguments for why this is still the thing that I want to do. Then the thing that you need to do is you need to go and get support from someone. So another family member or a friend, if family is quite hostile, continues to be hostile about the matter. Because ultimately you need to get some perspective from someone else who's not quite so in the situation. And also you just need a bit of support. So it might just be someone saying, if you go and tell your best friend says, do you know what, let's go out for a meal because this is just enough and let's not talk about it, or we can talk about it all evening if that's what you need. Or just someone who's got your interests 100% forefront of their mind and this issue isn't a problem with, because you need that support, because obviously we're thinking about it, making sure that there's compassion for you. So these are the things that I did. Unfortunately, I think had my dad lived to so I think if my dad had lived to 2021 to see how I've progressed through med school, beyond the the first years and how I've grown as a doctor, and you know, for my recent offer to be a paediatric surgeon, I think he would, you know, be thrilled and so happy for me and proud that I've done what I've done. Unfortunately, that isn't something that is available to me. But I hope that this video is useful for you and you can kind of sort through some of these tangly issues with your friends and family. Please leave me any comments, and thank you so much.